Ave Maria in the Afternoon is a co-production of Ave Maria Radio and EWTN Radio and carried across the EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network. Welcome to Ave Maria in the Afternoon, examining the world through the lens of faith from the heart of the Church to help us navigate the culture. Here's Dr. Marcus Peter.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much for joining us on this hour of Ave Maria in the Afternoon. I'm Marcus Peter. Always a blessing for me to be able to follow suit from the great work of Deacon Harold Burke Sivers. And I want to start by sharing the fact we're going to be talking with our friend Doug Keck of EWTN, and it's a joyous day. Today is the Feast of the Archangels, God's messengers, our helpers, Michael, Raphael, and Gabriel. These wondrous beings of light who chose the Lord before the foundation of the world, who are confirmed in the beatific vision, and who have given their lives in complete service of the divine will and therefore to our assistance. And that's right, every time we call upon them, we receive their work and their assistance. They are there, and by faith we know this to be true. So, on this Feast of the Archangels, we celebrate them. These are powerful helpers, sent by God throughout salvation history for us. Doug and I will be talking about exactly why we ought to appreciate them more. And frankly, considering everything that's happening in the world today and all of the concerns we have, whether it be socially, morally, now would be a good time to remember that firstly, we have guardian angels, and second, we have the whole host of heavenly angels at our side, at our beck and call, to aid us in this journey of walking to the covenant family of God and the beatific vision. We go on from there to speak with Tim Glemkowski. Tim Glemkowski was the founding CEO of the National Eucharistic Revival. He is now the executive director of Amazing Parish. They began their ministry a decade ago, well, actually over a decade ago by now, to help pastors and their leadership teams fulfill Christ's Great Commission to go make disciples of all nations. Tim and I will be talking about the issues surrounding not just the paradigm and perspective, but also just the very pragmatic realities of leadership at the parish level, both by pastors and by lay people who serve, and how programs like Amazing Parish, and therefore this summit, this 2026 summit, will aid in bringing about parish renewal. The issues of society that the parishes are facing will not go away. And Tim will be the first to admit that. But we can have programs that support the work of parishes, and that's what this is about. And then finally, we speak with Dale Ahlquist about his new biography of Chesterton, written in the voice of Chesterton. It's a truly unique work. All this after the headlines.
Thanks, Marcus, and good afternoon, everybody. This is your Ave Maria Radio News for Monday, September 29th. It is the Feast of the Archangels. Today's news is brought to you by Ave Maria University. Your vocation location is at avemaria.edu. St. John Henry Newman will be declared a Doctor of the Church on November 1st, the Solemnity of All Saints. Pope Leo made the announcement yesterday following a celebration of Mass for the Jubilee of Catechists. Newman will be the 38th Doctor of the Church, joining a select group of saints known for their enduring contributions to Catholic theology and spirituality. Police say everyone is accounted for in the deadly attack on a Mormon church in Michigan. 5 people, including the shooter, were killed and several others were injured. The tragedy unfolded Sunday morning in the small community of Grand Blanc, roughly 50 miles north of Detroit. Meanwhile, the head of the LDS Church has passed away. Russell Nelson had been the president of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints for the past 7 years and had been a member of the church's Quorum of the 12 for nearly 34 years. The church says he passed away Saturday night. He was 101 years old. The 22-year-old man accused of killing conservative activist Charlie Kirk appeared in court today. Tyler Robinson appeared at a virtual hearing in Provo where the defense asked for a preliminary hearing. That's where a judge will decide whether there is enough evidence against him to move ahead with a trial. The prosecution has already said it will seek the death penalty. Oregon is taking legal action against the Trump administration for its move to send National Guard troops to Portland. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth ordered 200 National Guard troops to be deployed to the city. Oregon's suit accuses Trump of exceeding his powers and infringing on the state's sovereign power to manage its own law enforcement activity. President Trump and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu are holding a joint news conference at the White House. Netanyahu addressed the United Nations General Assembly in New York on Friday. The Prime Minister says they are not yet done when it comes to funding Hamas in Gaza. Speaking on Friday, Trump says he thinks they can reach a deal with Gaza that will end the war. With your Ave Maria Radio News, this is Bryant Shanley.
Good afternoon and welcome back. I'm Marcus Peter. Joining me is Doug Keck of EWTN, and we are talking about the gift of the angels, the Archangels especially. Doug, great to speak with you again. How are you?
Great to be with you, as always.
Doug, I want to launch right into this because you have a true devotion to the Archangels, especially Michael, considering your encounters with Mother Angelica, and also, right, Gabriel being a patron saint of the proclamation of the gospel. So let's start there. Share with us about your own experience.
Well, certainly, as you recount the famous story of Mother with the shortwave radio, where she went up on top of a mountain, which is not a typical place you put a shortwave radio network, and one of the engineers there told her, well, this isn't going to work here, this isn't the right place, and she said, oh, sure it is, and he said, I don't think so, Mother. She said, do you see St. Michael over there? He said, no, I don't. She said, I do. This is where it's supposed to go. So that was one of the great stories that Mother had about St. Michael the Archangel, and she was always, as you indicated, a big proponent of evoking his name. I know for my family, even at the end of Mass on our own, we make sure we say the St. Michael the Archangel prayer, even though it's not, officially part of the Mass anymore. Because of the fact that, and certainly EWTN, when we do the Mass at EWTN, we do have the prayer, because it is a powerful prayer that Pope Leo of the last century, put together because he felt like Satan was running roughshod in the world, and we needed St. Michael's protection, because St. Michael was the one who's, at least in the book of Revelation, is indicated as the one who God used to toss him out of heaven. And so we need that support. And as you put so well, we have our own guardian angels. And, how many things in our own life at times, I always think of simple things like sitting at a stoplight and the light changes, and for some reason I feel like, don't go yet. And you pause a second and a car runs the red light. And it's like, was that just, you know what I mean? Is that intuition? Is that your angel just saying, hold back a little bit? There's also the great story that Mother had when she was younger, and she was crossing the street, and she was going to get hit by a car or a truck, I forget which one it was, and she felt pulled back into the sidewalk or the divider. And she would have gotten probably killed, if not at least terribly injured, and there was no one there. But she felt the pull, and she was pulled back. And there's stories like that all over, that people could say that, somebody was there who sort of showed up, and then they weren't quite there. So I think we have to keep in mind that, the angels are ever present. The idea at the Mass, the angels are totally present because of the Eucharist. And we have to have faith that our Lord has not left us alone, as he said he wouldn't. And the angels are one of the people who then work with us and try and help us and guide us. But again, we have free will, so we can do whatever we want.
And because of this free will, like you said, we can do whatever we want, but we're also held to a certain accountability of calling upon them.
Absolutely, and I think that's the thing when you are troubled and you call on the Lord or Our Lady, as intercession, or you ask your angel to help guide you, or things like that. I mean, the simple things. I know my wife, her guardian angel is very good at finding her a parking space. I know that for a fact, because my Lord, I'll be, I'm typical. Well, we'll park in the back where there's more spots. There's no spots up front. Oh, go look. And sure enough, there's one for her. And she has some disabilities in walking and stuff. So even if it's not one for a handicap spot, there's these other spots show up, and I always say, boy, the Lord really looks out for you on that. And that's I'm assuming that's her angel who's saying, no, there's probably a spot up there.
Right. And I'll be very honest, I've personally experienced those little things that you mentioned, including the finding of a spot. And so when we talk about, for example, the great moral evils that we're facing in the culture today. And you and I have talked about this. There's no Catholic right now who's not concerned about what we're seeing in the public sphere. Can you please talk about how the angels are a great help to us faithful to Christ?
Yeah, well, absolutely, because if we only had to rely on ourselves and the people in the material world, we'd have no chance.
Yeah.
Our Lord said that when they said, well, then who could be saved, right? And he said, well, with God, all things are possible. And that's the thing. We have to rely on the saints. We have to rely on St. Gabriel and St. Raphael and St. Michael the Archangel, because that's the only way we can succeed, because we are under attack from the other side.
Right.
You know, the evil we're dealing with is not being generated in this world. It's being exploited through this world. But that's not where it's coming from, and so we need to have the same kind of defense against that. Without just relying on, well, I can deal with this myself. That's if the time you think that you can do it on your own is when you're the most vulnerable. You need to be humble and realize I don't have that ability, that I am a fallen creature, and I need to rely on the angels and the saints, and I need to pray and ask for their support, and they'll answer those things, as we say with our Lord. Sometimes He doesn't give us the answers we want. Doesn't mean He doesn't answer it. But so many things in life, if you think about it, that you worry about, and then you pray about them, and suddenly you might have a day where 2 or 3 things like evaporate, and you're like, oh, well, that's not a problem anymore, and oh, that's not a problem anymore. Well,
right.
You know, some of that is prayer. I know somebody who worked at EWTN who was seriously ill with a brain injury, and it was touch and go, and he made it, and he's back at work, and it's great. But he said he and his wife could feel the prayers. They could literally feel that all the people at EWTN and anybody else EWTN encouraged, that they could feel the power of the prayer themselves in his recovery.
That's an outstanding testimony, because one thing you're highlighting here is, for many of our listeners, sometimes it feels like prayer, let alone intercessory prayer, is like a futile effort.
Absolutely not. First of all, even if we don't get the results we're looking for, it doesn't mean the prayer was wasted.
Right.
God always makes use of the prayers. And the big place is for yourself. So much of your ability to pray and ask for God's help helps you. It helps you in your humility. It helps you to realize you need to rely on God's help in your life and not think you can do it on your own. That's a very positive thing. That, I think, makes you a better Christian. I think in being that better person who's more humbled that way, it makes you a better person to deal with for other people. It makes you a better example to other people of what a Christian's supposed to be like. So even if what you're praying for in self doesn't itself work out, at least on the short term, that you think, so many things in life, if you think about it, things happened at times, and on the short term you thought, oh, this was really not a good thing. You know, people lost their job, or this didn't happen. I wanted this, and I didn't get it. And then, 3 months later or 6 months later, some other opportunity opens up, and it's like, oh, okay, so if those other things had come through, I wouldn't be able to have this now. So God knows what He's doing, because he sees into that future, because it's all present to Him at once. I talk about my own experience of being basically told that there was a job coming in the future that wouldn't pay a lot. You needed to save your money. And so that's what I did. So I could be prepared, hopefully, when the opportunity came to work at EWTN, and I hope that was what our Lord wanted me to do. But that's the kind of those hints, those whispers, those little pushes in the right direction. We have to always be listening to both sides. When we start to find ourselves moving in a direction that's taking you away from God, Father Spitzer always said, if you want to know whether the voices you're hearing or the direction you're getting is good or bad, does it bring you closer to God or further away? Right. That'll tell you where it's coming from.
Well, Doug, thank you very much. This was a truly beautiful conversation. I appreciate it.
Anytime, you know that. Take care.
My guest has been Doug Keck, who generously lends us his time every Monday to talk about current events and feast days. And today we've been talking about the Archangels. To heed Doug's counsel well, They are truly present, active, and alive in our Christian walk. Stay tuned. I'm Marcus Peter.
Honey, did you ever call Mighty Dog Roofing of Ann Arbor for that free roof inspection?
I knew I forgot something.
Roof leaks can cause mold buildup or even roof collapse. Protect your family today by calling local Catholics Dan and Mary Flanagan at Mighty Dog Roofing for a free inspection of your roof, siding, or windows. Mighty Dog Roofing, 734-224-4916. That's 734-224-4916.
Underwritten in part by the following nonprofit.
Are you paying high prices with a traditional health insurance company that pays for things that violate your conscience? There's an alternative available. Solidarity HealthShare is a community of faithful individuals and families that never share into immoral medical services, all while saving you money with prices starting as low as $85 per month for singles and $512 for families. Never fund another abortion with your healthcare dollars. Call 844-313-4999 to learn more.
Ave Maria in the Afternoon is underwritten by the following nonprofit organization: Real Estate for Life. Buying or selling your home or business property? Real Estate for Life can connect you with one of 1,400 pro-life real estate agents around the world. When Real Estate for Life receives a referral fee, they donate 70% to Ave Maria Radio and Human Life International. More information at realestateforlife.org or 877-LIFE-US1. That's realestateforlife.org.
You like pizza? Me too. And for that, we can thank our friend Tom Monahan. First, he starts with $900 and opens one pizza shop. Then it's worldwide, thousands of shops. But all this was just a warm-up for his greatest achievement yet. He built a university.
God inspired Tom to build up generations of men and women who have a hunger to reach the world for Christ. This place is Ave Maria University.
Visit avemaria.edu to see what's next.
Good afternoon and welcome back. I'm Marcus Peter. Amazing Parish, a transformative movement to help pastors and leadership teams fulfill Christ's Great Commission, is launching a 2026 Leadership Summit and renewed vision for the future. Joining me to talk about this is Tim Glemkowski, a global leader in Catholic Church in evangelization, leadership, and missionary renewal. He is now the executive director of Amazing Parish. Tim, great to speak with you again. How are you?
Yeah, good to speak with you as well. Thanks for having me.
Well, always a joy to connect with you. Let's talk about Amazing Parish in general as an effort for our listeners who don't know about it.
Yeah, so we were founded about 12 years ago by two Catholic laymen, businessmen, John Martin and Pat Lencioni, who each in their own way had impacted the world of business quite significantly, who got together to really pray about how was God calling them to collaborate for the sake of the church. And, over time, really, first launched a conference inviting a lot of pastors and parishes to join to hear about how to renew their parishes. They really identified that renewal in the church is the clarion call in front of us all now, and that renewal in the parish setting was particularly important for that renewal, that for it to be the pervasive reality of the church in the United States, the new evangelization or the move to mission, move to apostolic mission, however you want to call it, really needed to happen at the local level where so many Catholics and others still encounter the faith. So what started as a conference then became accompaniment, walking with pastors in coaching relationships over time. And over 12 years, we've worked with 1,100 pastors, really on their, as men, in some ways as leaders and as priests, to say, you've been invited in a particular way to lead the renewal of your parish. We're just going to walk with you to help you do that. Over time. And so we've learned a ton, made a lot of mistakes, and constantly iterated on how to best do that. But that's really, I would say, what we exist for today is leaders in the church who are passionate about renewal and really helping them find a community of practice, but also of personal renewal as they seek to do that. So it's a great kind of beautiful ministry. I feel very much so a steward of something that's been started by these great founders and something that I'm just kind of being asked to carry forward in the church to continue to help serve those leaders. So it's a beautiful ministry.
It certainly sounds like it. And because of that, I'd like to ask you to comment on one of the the core reasons for this work of renewal, which is essentially institutional and organizational health. If you could just broadly speak on the necessity of focusing on that part of parish life.
Yeah, so, I imagine a lot of lay people are those of us pew sitters right out there are probably listening, and maybe to a more or less, greater or less degree might be aware of what it's like for a lot of pastoral leaders in dioceses and parishes these days, right? Like, so we're in this time of there's incredible craziness in the world, driven by, secularism, right? Is really what's at the core of that. It's a worldview in the world that is no longer born out of like a Christian kind of worldview, right? Mm-hmm. So that's having dramatic effects on the culture. Meanwhile, the church, for similar reasons, is undergoing incredible institutional decline. Right? Like just a lot of it is demographic shifts, fewer priests to serve the same amount of parishes. And so there's this pressure-filled choke point of a greater need than ever in the world, the brokenness of the world, and more demands put on parish leaders, whether they're lay or clergy in particular, right? And then at the same time, many of the situations that many of these pastors or lay leaders are coming into are, for lack of a better word, more or less dysfunctional, Mm-hmm. And so what we really help them do is address the human dysfunction that so much often exists in the church, replace it with healthy systems, healthy clarity, healthy meetings, healthy mindsets and dispositions, healthy culture, right? So that then the church can be on mission. Because I think what happens so often is leaders want to drive renewal. They want to do new things focused on evangelization or formation or getting more families involved. The different dreams that they have for their parishes, liturgical renewal, all these different things. But those efforts are stultified and they burn out because they're working from, Jesus gives us this analogy, right? The parable of the seed and the sower, and it's the content of the soil, the rocks that are in the way, the shallowness of it at times that ultimately leads to a lack of fruitfulness. So we're always focused on that mission of the Great Commission, making disciples, the fruitfulness of the parish, but we really do some intensive work with leaders to make sure that there's a healthy culture put in place so that renewal can be even more impactful and that it's not over time choked out by some of that weeds of politics, human politics, or mediocrity even that so often exists in different places. So it's a very kind of comprehensive and foundational approach, but we find that's why so often what we've heard the feedback from many pastors, especially young ones who have come into their first or second pastor assignment, are getting kind of blown out of the water by what they're being confronted by. We hear them say to us, like, this didn't just help my parish, this saved my priesthood. And that's some of the most beautiful feedback for us to receive.
Tim, if you don't mind me asking you to press a little deeper into that, that's a common thread for those of us who actually seek out the feedback of especially pastors and parish leaders. That's a common thread, that there is a kind of siloing and isolation that those in leadership at the parish level experience. If you could speak to that and how that results in a kind of burnout that translates into parish life.
Yeah, I mean, so one of the great unspoken crises in the church today, and there's data to support this, is obviously we have a vocations crisis. The problem, so there's not enough priests right now relative, we don't have replacement numbers of priests now in almost every diocese. There's very few for whom that's not the case. The issue, though, is when you look at the attrition rates post-ordination for many priests over the first 10 years, there's some dioceses that are reporting that half of the newly ordained priests who are devout men who felt called to the priesthood, the attrition rates are almost 50% in some of these dioceses of men leaving the priesthood in the first 10 years. Well, it's because they're being put. I had a buddy, I was in seminary for a year, a big seminary in the Midwest. I had a buddy who was ordained for a diocese in Iowa. 11 months after ordination, he was a pastor of 4 parishes, and the drive distance time between the furthest 2 of those parishes was an hour and a half. So they're just being thrown, and then that's not even to mention, that's just the structural reality. That's not to even mention the reality on the ground in those parishes that might have the financial issues, they might have cultural issues, they might not have a lot of staff support, right? So this is also tracking for lay leaders as well, too. There are so many lay leaders. So, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, it's so many passionate parish lay leaders who really just wanted to be part of the work of evangelization at the local level. And more these days, like especially the really gifted ones, the ones that are just burning for mission, they enter into these situations and they encounter the reality of what the church can so often be on the ground, you know, like day in and day out, 9 to 5, what can actually feel like sometimes to work for the church. And they're just opting out and burning out. And so we really see Amazing Parish in some ways as that community. Like we want to be the place where those leaders can rest and can find rejuvenation and support and formation so that they can actually, fulfill the calling that was put on their life, the way that they wanted to commit and constrain their love for the sake of Jesus's church and his mission. Like we don't think that it should be the case or has to be the case, and we can't fix the decline in the church, or we can't fix the structural realities of how many parishes they have. Like those are above our pay grade, right? In working here in Amazing Parish, but we can help them while they're in those situations to actually find not just persistence in their ministry, but even joy, and it's working.
Well, I'm really glad to hear that. We're running out of time in this segment, but just very quickly, share with us the summit that you're going to have and how people can register.
Yeah, so we're resetting we've had this great conference every year for the last 12 years, sometimes even multiple a year, and we're resetting it in 2026 in Houston from August 3rd through 5th. Historically, it's really been, if you're working with Amazing Parish directly in our coaching, you can come to the summit. We want to open wide the doors to Christ. John Paul II told us, right? And any leaders in the church who want to find a place where they're going to be personally refreshed and fulfilled, encounter God in a powerful way, but also receive real formation and being poured into for 3 days are invited to join us at the Marriott Marquis for 3 days. We're going to have world-class speakers, our founder, Pat Lencioni, Julian Stans, others as well, too, that are going to be announced later, that are Dr. Jonathan Reyes, who really understand, how to pour into leaders in the church. We'd love for them to join us.
Well, thank you very much for your time, Tim.
Yeah, thank you for having me. God bless you.
My guest has been Tim Gankowski, Global Leader for the Catholic Church in Evangelization, Leadership, and Missionary Renewal. We've been talking about Amazing Parish and the 2026 Leadership Summit. We'll have more information of this in the description of today's program. Stay tuned. I'm Marcus Peter.
Beacon Skin and Surgeries is a comprehensive dermatology center on the border of Troy and Rochester Hills south of M59 and in Livonia. Beacon Skin and Surgeries perform full skin exams and focus on the diagnosis and treatment of all types of skin cancer and precancerous lesions. All are board-certified dermatologists and fellowship-trained surgeons. Call 248-852-1900. Beacon Skin and Surgeries, a beacon for patient care. 248-852-1900.
When the need for senior care arises, home is where the heart is. Visiting Angels provides home care for mom or dad up to 24 hours per day, including personal care, meals, and light housework. You may select your professional caregiver with Visiting Angels. More information at visitingangels.com or at 877-374-LIVE. That's 877-374-LIVE. Visiting Angels, America's choice in senior home care.
Underwritten in part by this not-for-profit.
Hi, this is Mike Ditkin.
Hey, this is Brian May.
Hi, I'm Chris Farley. You're listening to the Kevin Matthews Show.
I thought he was insane. A lot of people thought he was insane.
Nobody could touch us. We had 10 million people listening to us a week.
But that was my past. If you would have told me I'd be carrying around a broken statue of the Virgin Mary, talking about God, I'd say, are you high?
Broken Mary, the Kevin Matthews story. In theaters one day only on Tuesday, October 7th. Tickets at brokenmaryfilm.com.
This week on Christ is the Answer, we continue Father John's RCIA for Catholic series. Over the years of pastoring a church, Father John noticed that converts to Catholicism always seem to know their newly found faith much better than their cradle Catholic brothers and sisters. So he put together an RCIA for Catholic series. Join us this week as Father John shows us the beauty of the Mass and the prophetic vocation of women. Tune in for Christ is the Answer Monday through Fridays at 11 a.m. on Ave Maria Radio.
Communion is a very important word in the Catholic faith, referring to many things. The Catholic Catechism tells us that the communion of saints refers to the holy things, foremost to the Eucharist, by which the unity of believers, one body in Christ, is represented and brought about. Communion of saints also refers to holy persons in Christ, who, the Catechism says, died for all, so that what each one does or suffers in and for Christ bears fruit for all. Then there is the communion of the faithful, the pilgrims on earth, those who are being purified for heaven, and those who are already in heaven. All together they form one church. In this communion, we believe, the merciful love of God is always attentive to our prayers. This is Peggy Stanton, and this has been the Order of Malta's Minute with the Catechism.
You're listening to Ave Maria Radio.
Ave Maria Radio. This program brought to you in part by Ave Maria, Florida, a big kind of small town where golf carts take you everywhere and there's always something fun around the corner. Discover championship golf, resort-style amenities, and a town center full of shopping and dining. With Ave Maria University and Ave Maria Catholic Church at its heart, it's a community full of connection and charm. More than 25 model homes are available for viewing. More information can be found at AveMaria.com. That's AveMaria.com.
Do you own popular index mutual funds or ETFs? If so, you're automatically own shares of companies that conflict with your moral beliefs. Ave Maria mutual funds are managed to conform to pro-life and pro-family values. Long-term investors can invest in the no-load Ave Maria mutual funds. The experienced professional portfolio managers make decisions based on investment fundamentals and pro-life values. You can learn more about Ave Maria mutual funds today at 866-AVE-MARIA or visit AveMariaFunds.com.
Good afternoon and welcome back. I'm Ahlquist. Nearly a century after his death, GK Chesterton has come out with a new book about himself. Renowned Chesterton scholar Dale Ahlquist joins us with a unique retelling of Chesterton's life, utilizing Chesterton's own words from his own writings. Dale is president of the Society of Gilbert Keith Chesterton and creator and host of the EWTN series The Apostle of Common Sense. He's also publisher and editor of Gilbert Magazine and co-founder of the first Chesterton Academy in Hopkins, Minnesota. Dale, great to speak with you. How are you?
Oh, great. Thank you so much for having me today.
Well, always a joy to reconnect with you. And I want to, a fellow Chesterton lover, so there's no reason why I wouldn't, honestly. And I want to begin where you begin, which is the way Chesterton thinks about his own life. To begin with, I shall disappoint you. I've captured no cities, climbed no ultimate summits. I've not discovered the cure for anything. So, he presents this realistic, maybe somewhat self-deprecating vision of himself. But the man went on to create masterpieces, huge towering castles of words that continue to inform us in wisdom to this day. So I'd like to begin there.
Well, certainly Chesterton's humility is always his leading force. And that's one of the reasons why we had to write another autobiography of Chesterton, because he left himself out of the first one he wrote.
So from there then, give our listeners a concept of the historical and social milieu within which Chesterton grew up, and give us a sense of how he formed his intellect.
Yeah, well, he's a late Victorian. He grew up at the end of the 19th century and was surrounded by strong thinking and intellectuals, but it was also, while it was sort of an optimistic period, it was also the beginning of a very dark period. Everything preceding and including the First World War, pessimism started to fill the air, and bad philosophy started to fill the air. And so Chesterton was always reacting against those things. He was always defending the normal things because the normal things were under attack. And it's one of the most prophetic things about his writing, that you can read something he wrote in literally 1900, and it's completely applicable now. Chesterton foresaw that the modern philosophies were attacking the normal things. And so that's what he set his position as. I'm going to defend marriage, I'm going to defend family, I'm going to defend friendship, I'm going to defend simple pleasures that themselves are under attack by Puritanism. So the attacks come from all directions, and Chesterton became sort of the master of the repartee, who's standing at the center with swords coming from all sides.
I'm actually glad you brought that up, because I was going to highlight one of the ways in which he did see attacks from his youth, and this has to do with the the fantasy and even the pedagogy that he received. He talks about this. A Victorian childhood, while very innocent, was also a very childish childhood. So it wasn't like this man received the best of everything to form his intellect. A lot of it was his own disposition and effort in putting in the work.
Yeah, absolutely. Ironically, he was a poor student in school. And, but was always this deep and reflective thinker, and someone who lost himself in books, even though it didn't show up in the classroom. So he was going through this amazing pilgrimage as a young man that actually went through a very dark phase as well, where he even, faced a deep depression and considered ending his own life. And the fact that he came through all that with this joyful and truly childlike sense of wonder at the whole world is really an astounding thing.
And like you always call him, is the apostle of common sense, because he comes through all of that darkness, even from a young age, with a sense that it is sanity that the mind craves, and that's found in stability, in perennial truth that he found in the Catholic faith. I know I just put a lot there, but if you could unpack that for us, please.
No, you said it perfectly, Marcus, because his important book, Orthodoxy, is about what is the most sane philosophy.
Right.
He said, we're not allowed to talk about sin, so let's talk about madness. Let's talk about sanity. He said that the modern world is becoming insane.
Right.
And he talked about the ways that it was becoming insane, usually by focusing on obsessive single ideas rather than a balanced view of the world. And Chesterton found that there was only one philosophy that really seemed to answer everything, had an answer for every one of the modern problems that the world threw at it, and for all the bad philosophies that come along. He said there was only one thing that stood at the center, and that was Christianity. And then, that was only the first step in his journey of being completed by being a Catholic. He was already writing like a Catholic before his conversion.
That's right.
But Orthodoxy is a book you can't even tell he's not Catholic when you're writing it. It was 14 years before his conversion.
One reads Orthodoxy and thinks, I don't know how long he's going to keep this up. It was inevitable he was going to be Catholic. And one of my favorite lines from Orthodoxy, and actually while you were talking, I know you made an appeal to it, the world is full of the classical all Christian virtues gone mad. And that's exactly what you were talking about, that he was noticing, just like today, we have siloed particular functions of the human experience without realizing that, no, virtue is this all-encompassing reality of human existence in society.
Yeah, and by separating the virtues then do war with each other, and that's sort of what we have, going on right now.
That's right.
And what a good paradox from Chesterton. The virtues doing war with each other.
And you see, that's precisely why, like you've been mentioning, and you say this all the time, on the one hand, he wrote for his time. On the other hand, what he wrote is completely applicable to what we have today.
Yeah, just like the paradox that he's a very local writer writing about, the streets of London and the political events of the day, and yet he's this universal writer that you can read him anywhere and find he's speaking to you wherever you are. And Chesterton's popularity around the world, is a witness to the fact that he's universal as well as local. Chesterton says the most local saints are the most universal.
Yeah. Now, I want to dive a little bit into one of the ways in which he worked on forming his intellect. From a young age, he gave himself to the work of doing good literature. He was writing poems. Can you please talk about what that does to the human mind?
Chesterton argues that most people are naturally poets, but it's only the ones who aren't poets who become literary critics. But he says, the poem, when it's in its proper structure of having rhyme and meter, is what the ear wants. We want the sense of homecoming that we get when a rhyme is completed. And that's just satisfying to the mind. It starts as a child. We learn the nursery rhymes and we never forget them because they rhyme. Sometimes they don't even make sense, but we can't forget them because those rhymes become, are imprinted on us. Whereas, imagine a child trying to memorize modern verse and blank verse and free verse. That use of the language is not going to stay with you. And Chesterton says, if we were real enough, we'd all speak in rhyme. And, so poetry is actually, an advancement of language. It's something, it's language on a higher level and a higher gear. And prose is just a dim reflection of that. And that's why we struggle so hard to find the right way to express something, because we are trying to explain it in a prose that we are not very adequate at. And Chesterton, by writing poetry and by reading poetry, it made him tremendously eloquent.
He speaks similarly about all the other arts. What you've just described, what poetry does for the intellectual lexicon, the painting, for example, does for the intellect's aesthetics. We're talking with Dale Ahlquist, who recently put together a new autobiography of GK Chesterton, in his own words, no less. It's a truly intriguing read. Dale is the president of the Society of GK Chesterton and creator and host of the EWTN series, The Apostle of Common Sense. Stay tuned. Continuing on the inside, I'm Marcus Peter.
Today's programming on 990 WDEO is brought to you in part by a gift from our day sponsor, Pat Schaefer, who would like to wish her son, Michael Schaefer, a happy birthday today. Michael is a blessing in our lives. He's an excellent son and brother and devoted husband and father of 3 little boys and 1 little girl. We pray he has a blessed birthday today.
You can be a day sponsor too. Call toll-free 1-877-288-1077 and say, I want to be a day sponsor. Women from across Michigan are invited to come together to focus on their faith and experience the fellowship of sisterhood in Christ Jesus. It all takes place at the Michigan Catholic Women's Conference Saturday, October 11th. Throughout the day, women will be encouraged and inspired to ignite their spirits and grow their faith by hearing from Catholic speakers, engaging in praise and worship music, as well as celebrating Holy Mass with our bishops. Go to michigancwc.org today. The doctor is in Ann Arbor. Don't miss this chance to join Dr. Ray's studio audience for tapings of his hit TV show, Living Right with Dr. Ray.
The live audience makes the show.
The tapings are October 28th and 29th. 2 shows each night at 5:30 and 7:15 p.m. All shows are at Russell Video in Ann Arbor, and the cost is free.
Without the audience, there is no show.
Just sign up at AveMariaRadio.net.
Very much would love to see you.
Hi, it's Teresa Tomeo from Catholic Connection. Not having a will puts an unnecessary burden on your children. At mycatholicwill.com, a legal will is as simple as 15 minutes filling out information about your family. The standard cost, only $79.95. However, thanks to our partnership with mycatholicwill.com, when you use a promo code AVE, that's AVE, your will is absolutely free. No hidden costs whatsoever. So visit mycatholicwill.com.
It's time for Family Man with Dr. Gregory Popchak.
Imagine you signed up for flying lessons, but 5 minutes into your first lesson, your instructor handed you the plane's controls and told you to try landing. It sounds crazy, but that's what we do when we ask our kids to complete a task they're not equipped for. Whether it's managing their frustration respectfully or cleaning up the messy room, if they don't have the skills they need to succeed, we're setting them up to crash. Before asking our kids to fly solo, we parents need to do some basic pre-flight checks. Are our kids old enough for the task we're giving them? Have they consistently shown mastery of that task? If not, we need to mentor them from the co-pilot seat just a little bit longer. Dive more deeply into discipleship discipline techniques by checking out the newest editions of Parenting Your Kids with Grace or Parenting Your Teens and Tweens with Grace or visiting CatholicCounselors.com. I'm Dr. Greg Popchak, but you can call me Family Man.
To discover more ways faith can enrich your life, visit CatholicCounselors.com.
Ave Maria School of Law is the Roman Catholic law school in the United States. Consistently ranked in the Princeton Review as one of the best and most conservative law schools, as well as pre-law's most devout law school. Ave Maria School of Law provides a traditional legal education while emphasizing how the law intersects with the Catholic intellectual tradition and natural law philosophy. Ave Maria School of Law, unabashedly Catholic, consistently excellent. For more information, visit avemarialaw.edu.
St. Therese once told her sister Celine that when we trust ourselves and not God, our soul becomes barren and incapable of virtue. Her remedy? External works of charity. We all try to do it on our own sometimes without asking for God's help. At St. Paul Evangelization, we suggest sharing the gospel with someone who needs it. Check out streetevangelization.com to find a team near you where you can share the love of Jesus. If there isn't one in your area yet, perhaps God is calling you to start a team in your city. To learn more, visit streetevangelization.com.
Good afternoon and welcome back. I'm Ahlquist. I'm talking with Dale Ahlquist, who penned this great autobiography of GK Chesterton in the words of GK Chesterton. You know, Dale, I typically don't ask a person what inspired you to write the book because after reading the book I tend to get a sense, and I know you well, but I do want to ask, where did this thought to pen this based on his own words come from? That actually is creative.
Well, I explained it just very briefly in my thank yous at the beginning, the acknowledgments. There was an old staple newsletter published in the 1990s called Midwest Chesterton News. And the editor of that was one of my mentors, John Peterson. And he's still alive, but I know he's not doing too well. He's in his 90s. God bless him. But he did this little newsletter, and he had this little feature with about 4 or 5 quotations in it under the title Fragments of an Autobiography. And he just lifted a few lines from Chesterton that were about himself, taken from some other work, an essay here. And so that newsletter was one of the publications that led to the publishing of Gilbert Magazine that I am the editor and publisher of Chesterton Society. We kept the feature going, calling it GKC on GKC. And, we started lifting these quotes. It's just so quotable. But here was a theme. Chesterton writing about himself. It's so rare. And, after a few years, we had, maybe 6 pages of quotes. But then it started to occur to me, we could probably glean some more if we actually did it purposefully rather than just randomly. And so then I began in earnest to collect as many of these passages as I could, sometimes a paragraph, sometimes a whole essay that was autobiographical. And I realized that I was writing a book. It was just going to be an extended feature, but it became a project at that point, and I worked on it for decades.
Well, I'm really glad that you did, and this project really has come to fruition. And one of the things that you get a sense of in reading this, and especially if you've been reading Chesterton for years, is he doesn't seem to love a lot of his own works that he put out. For example, the way he talks about heretics, right? He said, I didn't particularly enjoy it. It's not a particularly good book, but I got a chance to be rude to my contemporaries, and that I enjoyed.
Yeah, it's really fun. It's one of the fun things about the book is that I found the few places where he writes about his own books, because he generally doesn't do that.
Right.
And so we got his own commentary on Orthodoxy, Heretics, Man with Thursday, and other of his famous books, where he addresses both the critics and the people who misunderstand the book. But that's a rare thing in Chesterton. So finding those articles was a lot of fun.
I'm glad it was a lot of fun, and because it's very clear you enjoyed this work. And one thing I do want to commend in reading this is you get a very human sense of Chesterton. It's easy to think of him as a towering intellectual giant and commentator, but it shows you that this is a man who grappled with the moral issues of his time and who compels us to do the same today.
Yes, it absolutely. The timeless quality, but the everyday quality is there too, which makes him, he's brilliant. He's so talented, and that's so impressive. And yet he's definitely within reach in this book. You could feel like you could be in the room talking with him in this book.
Yeah. Okay, so Dale, one of the things that did stick out obviously in his work of being a commonsensical apostle is he extolled the need for moral virtue over and above societal propriety. And so he even condemns this overt thing we do in society where we at the risk of not being polite, we are willing to water down morality and truth. If you could comment on that, please.
Yeah, and he even says, though, if you do water down Christian theology, Christian morality, it's still hot enough to boil the rest of the world to rags.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's an interesting insight from Orthodox. But yes, the danger is, in order not to offend someone, we will compromise the truth and compromise, really just honesty. But that's again where the virtues do war with each other. Out of pity, we compromise the truth. But at the other side, they out of truth they compromise pity. You have to always truth and compassion have to go hand in hand, and that's why we speak the truth in love. And Chesterton is really a master. You can always feel that he never wants to belittle or attack a person, but always to make the truth attractive so that the person will come to know the truth.
One of the people that shows up in this book a few times is Hilaire Belloc, whom we knew was not only a fellow author, but if you could also explain how the writings of Chesterton and Belloc have a real complementary quality to each other.
Yeah, it's really astonishing, Marcus, when you have two literary giants who happen to be good friends and not just contemporaries, but really knew each other well and had such a great respect for each other in addition to their friendship. But there's no question that Belloc was absolutely influential in really bringing the Catholic faith to Chesterton, who was really seeing it for the first time in Belloc. And one of the things that comes out in the timeline is the first time that Chesterton ever attended a Catholic Mass was with Belloc on Christmas Eve, Mass. And that was as early as 1900, when they were both young and had just gotten to know each other. But as much as Chesterton was influenced by Belloc, certainly for his Catholic social teaching ideas too, and the ideas of economic justice, Belloc was very dependent on Chesterton as well, because he just admired the fact that Chesterton's mind and spirit was so attractive. That's why Belloc wrote the poem, "The Only Man I Regularly Read." It's GK Chesterton.
And it was very clear the two of them held each other in high regard. And lest our listeners think that Chesterton and Belloc were just literary giants who stayed in the realm of, anywhere from the prosaic to the poetic, these were men who also were very pragmatic. Could you please tell us about the system of distributism? You and I talked about this in the past, and how they saw this would be one of the best ways to continue the vital life of societies.
Yeah, well, they were so influenced by the great encyclicals of Leo XIII, Rerum Novarum from 1891, and the fact that our present Pope Leo XIV, took the name Leo, and specifically because of that encyclical. And I have just great excitement and high hope that he's going to try to implement Pope Leo's ideas on a wider basis. But that's exactly what Belloc and Chesterton were trying to do, is implement the idea of widespread ownership as opposed to a few people owning a lot and other people not owning anything, or the state owning everything, right? The idea of a local market, local control, local freedom. They just did a marvelous job of really devoting themselves to these ideas when they could have been off writing great literary works. But the fact that they devoted their life to making a more just world, a more Catholic-centered society, it shows that they were really quite unselfish. They didn't. They didn't go for the literary glory, but that came because they were such good writers.
Right. Right, exactly. And so their brilliance showed the quality of the work by itself, but also just, like the way they thought about Rerum Novarum and applying those principles shows us that a well-formed mind is one that has expertise to apply the scriptures and the Christian truth to every facet of human existence.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, there's nothing narrow about these guys. They wrote about everything, they thought about everything, whether it was political or economic or social, but also artistic, theological, and philosophical.
Now, H.G. Wells, he had some differences with Chesterton. If you could help us understand the kind of man he was juxtaposed to Chesterton.
Yeah, so here are two guys who were just about on every aspect of their thinking and their viewpoints and their morals opposites.
Yep.
And yet they remained friends because Wells had such a great respect for Chesterton as a person, was drawn to his goodness, his wit, enjoyed arguing with him, but they would spend weekends at each other's homes. That's how much they enjoyed each other's company.
Right.
And yet they argued about absolutely everything and did not agree on anything. But Wells, his main problem, according to Chesterton, is that he was always changing his philosophy according to the way the wind was blowing.
Mm-hmm.
He says Wells was like a barometer. He can't tell you what the weather was, the literary and philosophical weather. But he was a socialist, at least for a while. There was some other variation on it. But he was this outstanding imaginative writer, this great science fiction writer. But his ideas on history were just awful because they were anti-Christian. In very many ways, it was H.G. Wells who inspired Chesterton to write his great book, which is The Everlasting Man.
Yep. Now, we're running out of time, Dale. I want to say thank you. Time always flies when you and I are talking about Chesterton. Thank you for making the time.
Let's do it again sometime, Marcus. God bless you.
Yep, God bless you too. My guest is Dale Ahlquist, President of the Society for GK Chesterton, creator and host of the EWTN series, The Apostle of Common Sense. I greatly encourage you, procure this new book of Dale's, I Also Had My Hour. This is an autobiography of Chesterton in Chesterton's own words, compiled by Dale. Thank you for joining us. I'm Marcus Peter.